I had been married to Chi and I for 3 years. It was only after his death that I discovered his morbid and paranoid longing for me from his diary. I'm so envious of the young lady's dog. I also want the young lady to put a collar on me. I dreamed of the young lady. When I woke up, I'm wet again, I'm guilty. With the diary in hand, I was reborn 10 years ago. It was the most down and out time for Chi and I. The look he gave me was cold, like a wild and untamed fierce dog. I smiled and hooked my finger. Smile, or I'll kiss your mouth until it's swollen. The deliberately maintained indifference on his face suddenly collapsed completely. 1. When I arrived at school in a Rolls Royce, Chi and I was selling egg-filled pancakes at the school gate. He was 186 meters tall, thin and tall. The cheap apron outlined his slender waistline. Just looking at his back, he gave a strong sense of being a good husband. Seemingly sensing something, Chi and I raised his eyes. His indifferent and world-weary eyes looked at me. An extra egg costs 5 yuan, and without an extra egg, it's 4 yuan. His tone was as calm as a stagnant pool of water. I smiled and showed my phone. How much for adding you as a friend? The hand holding the spatula tightened. He warned with a solemn face, Qingzi, this isn't a place for you to play around. His voice was cold, looking as if he was pushing people away from 1,000 miles away. I was a bit dazed. This Chi and I was different from the one in my memory. 2. In my previous life, my father went bankrupt and died when I was 25, and my fiancé went to prison. I fell from a rich young lady to the abyss. To pay off the debts, I signed a contract with an internet celebrity company. The company arranged a 12-hour live streaming task for me every day. If I didn't want to do it, I had to pay a huge liquidated damages. I thought my life was over like this. Suddenly, the company was acquired by a certain big shot, and all the exploitative contracts were invalidated. When signing the new contract, I found out that the new boss was Chi and I. He was my classmate in high school and university. He no longer had the down and out and gloomy look of his youth. He had a calm temperament, wearing a set of high-end custom-made suits. He looked extremely noble. He had become someone I could only look up to. I suppressed the bitterness and lowered my head. He took the pen from my hand, and his gentle gaze fell on my face, with a faint burning sensation. Chi and I asked me if I was willing to marry him, and he would pay off all my debts. Seeing my stunned look, he explained lightly that I had helped him in high school, and my father had also funded him in university. I was his benefactor. I racked my brains and thought about it. The help he mentioned was nothing more than that he had worked part-time at my home for a while in high school. It's okay if you're not willing. Don't worry about those debts. I thought for only a second and then simply agreed. Chi and I was silent for a while and then lowered his pitch black eyes. I'm not a good person. This is taking advantage of kindness to repay. I can give you time to think it over carefully. Don't force yourself. I shook my head. Mr. Chi, I'm willing. To show that I wasn't being forced, I carefully hooked his little finger. Suddenly, Chini's hand trembled, and his whole body tensed up, like a wild beast breaking out of its cage. Strong emotion surged in his eyes. His gaze was so intense that it seemed as if he wanted to swallow me in one bite. It was a bit scary, but when I saw his red ears, I wasn't afraid at all. I boldly threw myself into his arms. After getting married, Chi and I respected me very much. According to the nanny, he almost treated me like an ancestor. However, Chi and I never touched me. I shyly took the initiative to tease him. The corners of his eyes were tinged with a faint red. Clearly, his breathing was disordered, but he restrained himself and stuffed me into the quilt. Sorry, I'm not okay there. He gave an explanation in a hoarse voice. I took a look down. Liar. He was so excited that his suit pants were almost bursting. I thought Chi and I didn't like me and married me just to repay his kindness. It was only after his death that I accidentally found his diary. After opening it, my heart was pounding wildly. The young lady smells so good. I can never get enough of it. I'm so jealous of that ugly dog. It can be held in her arms. Why can't I be a dog? Is it because I'm not ugly enough? I dreamed of the young lady. When I woke up, I'm wet again. I'm guilty. If I die, will the young lady cry? I'd better die quietly. The young lady looks the most beautiful when she smiles. I never expected that the cold and gentle Chi and I actually had such crazy longings for me in his heart. You damned man. You made me live like a widow for 3 years. In this life, I don't believe I can't pry open his hard-mouthed lips. 3. No kidding. Chi and I was busier than the president every day. He sold egg-filled pancakes in the morning, worked part-time during the day, and stayed up all night writing code for his startup at night. He was rated as the poorest school hunk in University A. It was said that when he learned that he was rated as the school hunk, Chi and I didn't even lift his eyelids, he only asked, "Can the title of school hunk be converted into cash?" Everyone said he was crazy about money. This directly led to the fact that I only spent 200 yuan to hire Chi and I as an art model. The moment he stepped into the classroom and saw me, his steps paused. I didn't give him a chance to back out. I closed the door with a bang. "Student Chi and I, you've taken my money. Do you want to run away?" It seemed that he just reacted and withdrew his gaze from my face. He consciously sat on the chair, knees together, hands stiffly placed on his thighs. His lips were tightly pursed. "You can start." I looked at him with a smile. "Take off your clothes." "What?" He slightly raised his eyes. He looked very much like a frightened fierce dog. I said matter-of-factly, "As an art model, of course you have to take off your clothes. Don't you have even this bit of professional ethics?" There was a long standoff. Chi and I closed his eyes and gave in. He raised his hand and slowly unbuttoned the first button of his shirt, revealing his sexy Adam's apple. Then came his beautiful collarbone, going further down. I sincerely praised, "It's very beautiful." Student Chi and I is pink. The 19-year-old Chi and I didn't have the calmness and composure of 10 years later, just being teased a few times. Even his fair skin turned a thin layer of pink. His slender, jointed hand pressed on his waist, as if he was enduring to the extreme. "Shut up." He scolded softly, ashamed and annoyed. The air conditioner was set at a high temperature. Sweat trickled down his abdominal muscles and disappeared below his beautiful mermaid line. I kindly pinched a tissue to wipe his sweat. Both Chi and I and his brother stood up straight. "So polite," I commented, following my gaze. Chi's whole body stiffened, and his face looked extremely ugly. He reflexively grabbed his backpack to block it. The veins on the back of his hand bulged, full of tension. In the previous life, it was also this hand that gently patted my back in countless nights to drive away my nightmares. Chi and I repeatedly emphasized that he was taking advantage of kindness to repay and wasn't a good person, but there was no one better than him in the world. A person who loved money so much gave me his hundreds of millions of without reservation. What a fool. The 19-year-old Chi and I wasn't gentle. "Are you done drawing?" "I'm leaving." He had a straight face and an extremely rude tone. I knew very well that this was just his bluffing disguise. I stood on tiptoe and kissed him on the corner of his lips. "Good boy, let's call it a day." The fierce expression on his face could no longer be maintained. He covered the kissed part of his face and took a step back. "What are you doing?" There was disbelief in his pitch-black eyes, like a beautiful innocent girl forced by a bully. I blinked, looking very innocent. "This is your reward, don't you like it?" "What do you take me for?" Chi and I tightened the straps of his school bag, and the broken hair hanging down in front of his forehead blocked the emotions in his eyes. "Chungzi." His slightly hoarse voice said word by word. "I'm not that kind of shady person." He was so angry that his face turned red. He walked very fast, as if there were evil spirits chasing after him. Not long after, my phone received 200 yuan that Chi and I had returned. He was determined to draw a clear line with me. I deliberately played the blame-shifting game. "Chi and I, that was my first kiss. 200 yuan isn't enough." It was also my first kiss. As soon as the message was sent, he hastily withdrew it. The chat box kept showing typing. When I came back after taking a shower, in 20 minutes, my phone was filled with messages from Chi and I. He probably finally calmed down, just like in the art studio. His tone was stiff. "So what do you want?" Another 5 minutes passed. Prompt: "Your new friend Chi and I has transferred 3,527.24 yuan to your account. Chi and I, this is all I have on hand. The rest is in financial management. I'll withdraw it tomorrow." After a while, "Chingzi, I'm not angry with you. This kind of thing can only be done between boyfriend and girlfriend. You already have a fiancé." I accepted the money and sent him a voice message. "Student Chi and I, I'll act as if this never happened and won't affect your reputation." One sentence interrupted the spell casting on the other side. After a while, Chi and I sent 2 dry words. "Okay." I lay on the bed, imagining what expression Chi and I might have now. Suddenly, I saw a message from Su Jing. Su Jing was my cousin. After my uncle and aunt passed away, my parents took her in and took care of her at home. I had always regarded her as my own sister. It was only until the Ching family went bankrupt that I discovered that she had been jealous of our family for so many years. She was jealous that my family was rich, jealous that I was loved and grew up pampered by my parents, and hated that I was engaged to the boy she had a crush on. She deliberately leaked the company's confidential documents and then showed off her love with my fiancé in front of my sickbed, making my father's heart stop. On the phone, Su Jing's voice was sweet. Did you quarrel with Zhou Yang again? I booked a table at the bar tonight and also called Zhou Yang by the way. This time, I'll definitely force him to apologize to you. It was the same old thing again. Whenever I had a conflict with my fiancé, Su Jing would always act as a confidant sister to persuade us, but the more she persuaded, the worse my relationship with Zhou Yang became. Listening to her gentle voice, I smiled. Cousin, do you think too highly of yourself, forcing Zhou Yang to apologize to me? Are you his mother or his great-grandmother? I could tell she was being fake nice. Su Jing was slightly stunned. Zi, how can you say such ugly words to your sister? I said casually, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with my family education. After hanging up the phone, I asked a makeup artist to do a man-killing nightclub makeup and set off happily, because I found out that Chi and I worked part-time at this bar at night. It would be nice to show my face in front of my future husband by the way. 5. Chi and I was cleaning up the messy tables in the bar, under the ambiguous and dim lights. He was mopping the floor very seriously with a rag. He didn't sell his body or his skills. Just as hard work. With his broad shoulders, narrow waist, curvy buttocks, and long legs, he attracted the attention of many people. When he saw me, his eyebrows knitted tightly. Before he could speak, Su Jing came out of the private box to welcome me. She glanced at Chi and I. This male model is not bad. Do you like him? I'm not a male model, Chi and I explained with a cold face. Su Jing waved her hand indifferently. Then you ask the manager to call a group of male models over. I want the highest quality ones. I was pulled into the private box by Su Jing. There were several of her friends sitting inside. Zhou Yang has a very stubborn temper and refuses to come and apologize no matter what. Su Jing raised a smiling face. There are more men in the world than just Zhou Yang. In my opinion, you should try someone else. When Zhou Yang gets jealous and anxious, he will definitely know how to bow his head and apologize, her friends echoed. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Why stick to just one? Zhou Yang is nothing. Su Jing clapped her hands, and the door of the private box opened. Male models of various styles filed in, bringing in a pungent smell of perfume. Chi and I walked at the end, calmly placing the fruit plate and drinks on the table. Pick the best one to accompany you tonight. Consider it a boredom-relieving gift from your sister. Su Jing looked very understanding. A few of her friends secretly raised their phones. They just wanted to take a video and send it to Zhou Yang to drive a wedge between me and him. I had seen so many such despicable means after going bankrupt in my previous life. Then you, and you. I pointed to the 3 most expensive male models in the room. I turned my head and smiled at Su Jing. Cousin, I have a big appetite. I'm going to make you spend a fortune tonight. My parents gave the same amount of pocket money to Su Jing and me. But Su Jing was extravagant and loved to show off in front of her friends, so all along, I had been quietly covering for her. Tonight, she was probably going to max out her credit card. Su Jing forced a smile. It's okay, as long as you like it. After all, I'm your sister, right? I hugged 3 male models on either side. Before going out, I took a look at Chi and I, who was still arranging the fruit plate, so dedicated. The watermelon slices were almost squeezed into watermelon juice by him. Su Jing opened a luxury suite for me. Suddenly, the room card in my hand was snatched away. Chi and I stood in front of me, his breathing becoming rapid. Qingzi, this isn't a place to fool around. I know, so I'm going to fool around somewhere else. Qingzi's face turned pale. Several male models teased. Does the part-timer also want to join? He's so wooden. Can he serve Miss Qing well? Kid, go mop your floor properly. Chi and I pursed his lips tightly and said nothing. Until I reached out to snatch the key from his hand, but instead, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. His strong arm was across my waist. I struggled a bit, and Chi and I hugged me even tighter. I looked up and met his wet eyes. His eyelashes were gently trembling. Hot breath sprayed in my ear. Don't choose them, choose me. His voice was so suppressed that it was almost broken. Miss, choose me. I'm cleaner than them. 6. Finally, I understood why in those domineering president novels, the male lead would fall in love at first sight with the stubborn little white flower female lead. I might really not be a good person. Seeing Qingzi's forbearing and fragile appearance, I just wanted to bully him even more, until we were led into the hotel suite. Chi and I still maintained the posture of holding me in his arms. He looked dazed. It seemed that he didn't know how things had developed to this point. Qingzi, call me miss. I raised my index finger and touched his lips. I pressed down on them provocatively. Why are you frowning, Student Chi and I? Weren't you so bold when you drove those 3 people away just now? You said you were better than them. Is it here, or here? The muscles under my palm suddenly stiffened as if they had been electrocuted. Before I could fully appreciate the boy's ashamed and indignant expression, my wrist was grabbed. Qingzi, do you really have to be like this? Those eyes were dark and deep, filled with a profound and surging desire that was even thicker than the night outside the window. It was creepy to look at. I smiled and tilted my head back, pecking at his protruding Adam's apple. Qingzi's fierce mask shattered into pieces, his breathing became disordered, and he chased after my lips and kissed me. The 29-year-old Chi and I was always calm, powerful, gentle, and reserved. The 19-year-old Chi and I was just the opposite. He was like a tireless young calf, full of boundless brute force. He would get extremely excited with just a few teases. He had no skills and only knew how to plunder clumsily. He was so clumsy. I tilted my head back and kissed his tense chin. Student Chi and I, who is the shady person? He lowered his eyes and glanced at me without saying a word, just focusing on what he was doing. Student Chi and I has such a stubborn mouth. Everything about you is stubborn. Stop talking. Chi and I was furious and covered my eyes. His actions were fierce, but the kiss that landed carried a devout longing. Suddenly losing my sight, my sense of hearing became even more acute. I boldly teased him. Student Chi and I, you sound so nice when you make those noises. Okay, this time, my mouth was also fiercely blocked. I was like a triple-fold mobile phone. Chi and I treated me like a treasure, tossing and turning with me until dawn. When the knock on the door sounded, Chi and I instinctively lifted the quilt and wrapped me tightly. Qingzi, open the door quickly. I know you're in there. Are you too afraid to open the door because you dared to cheat on me? Zhou Yang's furious voice floated into the room word by word. Chi and I seemed to have just come to his senses, and his bloodshot eyes awkwardly avoided mine. His fingers tightly grasped the bed sheet. Do you want me to hide? The air was filled with a thrilling smell that made people's faces turn red and their hearts race. Qingzi's chest and back were covered with scratches, not to mention the corner of his mouth that was broken. He was like a wolf cub who had been severely bullied but still lowered his head and looked submissive. Somehow, I didn't want others to see him in this state. Outside, Zhou Yang's angry roars didn't stop, mixed with Su Jing's gentle soothing voice. It was so annoying. I directly dialed the phone and wailed into it. Mom and Dad, my cousin is pregnant with Zhou Yang's child. Yes, I've been cheated on. Woo-woo. After hanging up the phone, a series of mobile phone ringtones sounded outside the door. Zhou Yang and Su Jing were flustered as they explained to the phone. Gradually, the voices outside the door faded away. The tears that I had finally squeezed out were gently wiped away by Chi and I. His eyebrows furrowed into a small hill. Did they betray you? Yes. Stop crying. It's not worth it. In novels, the male lead would use all kinds of sweet words to make people feel elated. Chi and I couldn't do that. He could only say a few dry words over and over again. My eyes were filled with tears, and I cast flirtatious glances at him. I was hoping that he would coax me more. Chi and I was silent for a while, as if he had made up his mind. His tone was solemn. Qingzi, I will act as if this never happened. It won't affect your reputation. Go away. I might as well have cast my flirtatious glances at a dog. I took a deep breath. Chi and I, don't you have anything to confess to me? Who exactly saved me when I fell into the water in my sophomore year of high school? 7. In high school, Chi and I went to the same school. When he came to work part-time, my parents paid him extra to take better care of me. In more common terms, Chi and I was my lackey. He didn't seem to care about the mockery from others. He always called me miss in a serious manner and followed me dutifully. During the summer vacation of my sophomore year in high school, I went camping in the mountains with several of my peers in the same social circle. While playing around, I was swept into the river by the turbulent water. When I woke up again, I was lying in the same hospital room as Zhou Yang. Everyone said that Zhou Yang had risked his life to save me. I regarded him as my savior and treated him with preference and tolerance everywhere. During the same period, Chi and I resigned from his part-time job, transferred schools, and disappeared without a trace. It was only in my previous life when I opened the diary that I learned the truth. The one who saved me was clearly this big fool. Chi and I retrieved the medical records from that time from the hospital. In order to save me, his legs were broken, and his calves were scratched by stones, leaving several deep blood marks that could even show the bone. he disappeared from my world silently, covered in injuries. In the diary, Chi and I didn't write the reason. Now, when I pressed him, he instinctively tightened his grip on the bed sheet. I don't know, he was still pretending. I got angry. I directly hooked my arm around his neck and bit the other corner of his mouth. I took a hard bite. Do you know now? His eyelids twitched, and he lowered his voice. Sorry, it's getting late. I have to go sell pancakes. I laughed out of anger. As the young lady of the Chung family, how could I be less important than a multigrain pancake? The 29-year-old Chi and I was clearly not like this. When he heard me cough on the phone, he would immediately end his work and rush back from abroad. No matter how busy he was on a business trip, he would always remember to bring me all kinds of small gifts that I liked. After I found a job, he would definitely take a detour every day to send me to work and pick me up after work. The assistant said that for a big boss like Mr. Chi, time was more precious than money. He said I don't love you and I can't with his mouth. But he left all the most precious things to me. I was probably spoiled by Chi and I couldn't accept such a big gap from 10 years ago. 8. When I got home, everyone was there. Su Jing knelt on the ground crying. Aunt and uncle, Zhou Yang and I are innocent. I don't know why my sister is slandering me. Zhou Yang helped her up, his face full of anger. Chung Zi, stop being unreasonable. There's no need to involve innocent people in our conflict. She's your sister, not a servant. Why should she kneel to you? My mother hugged Su Jing distressfully and comforted her softly. My father also sternly said that he would definitely clear her name. I still couldn't figure it out. What right did Su Jing have to hate our whole family to the core, just for a man? If in my previous life she had directly said that she liked Zhou Yang, I would have happily fulfilled them, but she didn't. She was submissive with her mouth, but in her heart, she was planning how to push me and my parents to their deaths. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Zhou Yan became even more confident. You went to the bar and ordered male models just to make me angry and force me to make up with you. Can you please change your young lady's temper? Who else can tolerate you except me? If you can't stand it, then break off the engagement. After coldly leaving such a sentence, I directly went upstairs and returned to my room. Zhou Yang left in a fit of anger. During dinner, it was just me and Su Jing at home. Her eyes were swollen, and she forced a smile. Zhou Yang really likes you, even though you treated him like that. He didn't even think about breaking off the engagement. That's because he's despicable. I slowly shoveled rice into my mouth. Cousin, give me some of the stuff you put in the hotel room that night. I had known for a long time that she had put an aphrodisiac incense in the suite in advance. Otherwise, Chi and I wouldn't have lost control like that. Although he looked really cute when he lost control, Su Jing still wanted to argue, but I interrupted her with a smile. Give it to me, or I'll call the police. Su Jing couldn't even pretend to be weak anymore. She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and fear. Chung Zi, what on earth do you want to do? I sighed. I feel sorry for you. Cousin, if you were really pregnant with Zhou Yang's child, would you still be afraid that he wouldn't marry you? In my previous life, Su Jing was indeed pregnant and colluded with Zhou Yang to bring down the Chung family's business. She fantasized about becoming Mrs. Zhou, but she didn't expect that without the protection of the Chung family, her tenderness and consideration became worthless in Zhou Yang's eyes. Zhou Yang was still determined to marry me as if he had gone crazy. On the wedding day, Su Jing rushed over with a fruit knife. In the chaos, I kindly pushed Zhou Yang. He happened to run into the blade. After a day and a night of rescue, although Zhou Yang's life was saved, he became a vegetable. Even though Su Jing cursed and said that the person she wanted to stab was me, she still couldn't avoid being sent to prison by the Zhou family. And naturally, the child in her belly wasn't saved. The only bloodline of Zhou Yang was gone. However, in his vegetative state, all these things didn't matter anymore. The Zhou family belatedly realized that this was my revenge, but they couldn't find any evidence. They gnashed their teeth and publicized that their son was a pure love warrior and a deep lover who took the knife for his fiancée. I'm afraid that in the whole world, only this fool, Chi and I, thought that I was deeply in love with Zhou Yang. Before he died, he hired more than a dozen bodyguards for me. He purchased several properties abroad. He also quietly formed a high-level medical team to study the rehabilitation technology for vegetative patients. In his will, he told me calmly and distantly, Chung Zi is free, no matter which kind of life she chooses, he will support her. I ran back to my room and pressed the yellowed diary against my chest. Tears fell on the back of my hand. I confidently dialed Chini's phone number. Honey, they all bullied me. 9. I wanted to take Chi and I to the hospital for a physical examination. There were still 10 years before he died of gastric cancer, and everything was still in time, but Chi and I avoided me for more than half a month. It was as if I was a man-eating flood or a ferocious beast, so I had to intercept him in front of the pancake stall. Chi's eyes were cold, he was completely different from the passionate person that night. I smiled and said, "Boss Chi, add a sausage and 2 eggs." The boy had an expressionless face like a robot, but his hand trembled, and he got a blister from the hot iron plate. "It hurts me to see you get hurt." Since Chi and I couldn't say sweet words, then it was my turn. He could just be the female lead in a sweet romance novel. I seized the opportunity and frantically poured out cheesy pickup lines. Chi's ears turned red visibly, just as I was about to reach out and tease him. A sneer came from behind. The window of the Porsche on the side of the road rolled down, and Zhou Yang leisurely propped his forehead. "Gigi, have you had enough of this tantrum for so many days? Do you think you can make me jealous by casually finding a man?" He glanced at Chi's back and sneered, "And he's such an unremarkable man. Come back with me and apologize to Sister Jingjing. Be good, go to hell." I picked up the ketchup on the table and squirted it all over his head and face. "If you lick it clean obediently, I'll apologize." Zhou Yang cared about his face, with ketchup all over his head and face and being watched by people. He didn't have time to wipe off the mess and quickly rolled up the car window. More and more people were watching the scene. Chi and I pursed his lips and left without saying a word. I trotted after him. No matter how much I called him, he ignored me. To avoid me, he went into the restroom. I chased after him. Chi's eyelids twitched. "This is the men's restroom. Then will you come to the women's restroom with me?" He ignored my humor and said in a cold voice, "Qingzi, I won't go to the hospital with you, and you don't need to worry about my business, but I insist on taking care of it." Chi and I was silent for a few seconds, when he raised his eyes. There was a hint of coldness in his eyes. That night, it was just a deal of money and sex. Don't think too much about it. I held back the urge to punch him. I tasted the sex. "Did you take the money, or do you, Student Chi and I, want to do monthly settlement?" He was speechless, even his fair neck turned pink. Just as I was about to tease him a few more words, the sound of footsteps came from outside. Chi and I was quick-eyed and grabbed me into the restroom cubicle. It was a bit dirty. I wrinkled my nose in disgust and grabbed Chi's sleeve. He lowered his eyes and glanced at me, his expression indifferent, but his hand honestly supported my waist. I took the opportunity to step on his shoes, and the top of my head rubbed against his chin. The distance suddenly closed in, and the cold woody fragrance on the boy diluted the smell of the restroom. In the quiet space, the pattering sound of water outside the door was infinitely amplified, accompanied by the man's whistling. Chi and I frowned and raised his hand to cover my ears. "Come to the hospital with me." I mouthed the words. Chi and I ignored me. I reached down and used the opportunity to coerce him. "Go or not." I exerted a little force on my hand. A low and hoarse groan escaped from his mouth. "Damn it." The whistling outside the door stopped. The door panel that Chi and I was leaning against was knocked twice. "Dude, doing handiwork in the restroom during the day, is it that exciting?" Meeting Chi's warning gaze, I wickedly clenched my palm. An uncontrollable gasp suddenly came out of the small cubicle. Because of his forbearance, even the blue veins on the back of his hand bulged. "Don't you want to go? Don't force me to kiss you here." He tensed his jaw and nodded stiffly. The person outside had already left. My scheme succeeded, and I pulled Chi and I to go out, but he pulled my wrist away. He panicked and averted his gaze. "You go out first." I took a look down. Tisk, Student Chi and I. "Don't do handiwork for too long. It's not good for your health." His face turned completely black. "Hee. It's really fun to tease my husband." 10. Just to be on the safe side, I made an appointment for a full set of physical examinations. Looking at the long list of examinations, Chi and I frowned resistantly. Why do I need to have so many examinations? Of course, I couldn't say that I was afraid he had cancer. I threw a flirtatious glance at him. "To be my man, of course. You need to maintain good health, Qingzi." "I'm not," he retorted coldly. Student Chi and I, do you like bed play? If you don't want me to kiss you in the hospital, then shut up and have the examinations obediently." Chi's eyes widened slightly, as if he was shocked. When we walked through the corridor, he suddenly stopped. "Qingzi, don't you ever, so talkative." I impatiently pushed him into the small room next to us. I pressed him against the door panel, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him, until the heartbeat under my palm became more and more intense. This was dangerous. I was even afraid that he would die of a sudden heart attack. When I pulled away from his lips, he instinctively opened his mouth and leaned forward to chase after me. After realizing what he had done, Chini's face turned extremely ugly. He raised his hand to cover my eyes, and his palm was trembling. Don't look. The 19-year-old Chi and I had as thin as paper. After being kissed, he became obedient. He didn't say a word for the whole day until the examinations were over. The examination results were not good. There were more than a dozen polyps in Chini's stomach, and it was difficult to determine their nature. We can only remove them and do a pathological examination. Is there a family history of the disease? The doctor asked. Both my grandfather and grandmother died of gastric cancer. Chini's eyes were empty, and it was unknown what he was thinking. The doctor's eyes showed pity. You should be hospitalized and have them removed as soon as possible. Chi and I didn't cooperate at all. He had just been admitted to the hospital, and the next day he tried to escape from prison, but I caught him red-handed. I was angry at his indifferent attitude towards his own body. Chi and I, if you keep treating your body like this, I won't like you anymore. I threw the instant noodle box into the cabinet and then placed the nutritious breakfast I brought neatly on the table. It was only when a spoon was stuffed into his hand that Chi and I seemed to come back to his senses. He was all flustered and irritable. Chungzi, are you being too confident? Who wants your affection? The 29-year-old Chi and I was gentle and open-minded and would never attack people with mean words. A sick person is always particularly vulnerable. I sighed inwardly and didn't intend to argue. Chi and I threw the spoon back into the bowl. The boiling soup splashed onto my arm, and a patch of skin turned red instantly. Chini's face paled a bit, and he averted his gaze. His tone was stiff and cold. Miss Chung likes to serve others so much. Why don't you apply for a job as a nurse in the hospital? This was the first time I had heard Chi and I speak sarcastically to me. My arm stung with pain, but it couldn't compare to the discomfort in my chest. I sneered. Chi and I, don't make me angry. As if deliberately going against me. He took out the instant noodles and poured warm water over them. The noodles hadn't even soaked properly, and he ate them quickly and impatiently. I turned around and left. At noon, the nurse called and said that Chi and I had just left the hospital and didn't say where he was going. Did he have instant noodles for lunch again? I asked. Before he left, he finished all the breakfast Miss Chung brought. Did he heat it up? No. I don't know why, but I felt even more uncomfortable. I would rather he had eaten hot instant noodles. Chi and I had always been thrifty in his life. In my previous life, the first time he took me into the empty villa, I thought it was his idle property and that he planned to hide his lover in a luxurious house. Later, I learned that this was his home. The villa had 3 floors in total. What belonged to Chi and I was only a guest bedroom without a balcony and a small study. There were only a few clothes of his in the closet. The second and third floors were my dressing room, cloakroom, audiovisual room, tea room. The entire villa was filled with my things, and occasionally I would feel embarrassed. I asked Chi and I if I was being a bit too much. I didn't have the slightest awareness of being a kept woman. Chi and I, who was looking at the documents, was stunned for a moment. He slowly took off his frameless glasses, and his black eyes were filled with a gentle smile. Miss, this is your home, he said in a deep voice. More like a coaxing murmur. Even if you go a bit further, it's not too much. Sigh. My good husband, why does he have such a long rebellious adolescence? 11. Chi and I didn't go back to school. According to the address given by his roommate, I found his residence. I knocked a few times, but no one answered. The door had a combination lock. I casually entered my birthday, and the door opened. Chi and I wasn't at home. The house was decorated in a cold and simple style, with only black, white, and gray colors. The furniture and furnishings were even more shabby. A familiar pink color peeked out from beside the pillow. I pulled it out and took a look. Sure enough, it was a diary. The diary of the 19-year-old Chi and I. It's not very moral to peek at someone else's diary. So while feeling repentant, I eagerly opened it. It was 99% similar in content to the one in my room. The only difference was that in my previous life, Chi and I had no interaction during our university days, so at most, he would just write a few awkward sentences occasionally. I saw the young lady again, and my heart is beating so fast. I had a dream about her. I'm about to explode with pent-up feelings, and on the latest page of this diary. The handwriting was intermittent and shaking like wavy lines. He wrote, I finally belonged to the young lady. The marked date was the night at the bar. I felt like laughing. He was really as shyly flirtatious as ever for 10 years. There was a safe beside the bed that didn't match the shabby room at all. I could enter the password with my eyes closed. When I saw what was inside, tears welled up in my eyes first. It was a will. The black characters on the white paper were all too familiar. G.N.I., whose parents had both passed away and had to work part-time to earn his tuition fees since he was a teenager, must have worked so hard to earn so much money. 2 million yuan was probably all his assets. Just like in my previous life, he left everything to me. I wiped away my tears and opened the letter left for me. Chungzi, I don't have any other intentions. I was taken care of by your parents in high school. Consider this money as my repayment. You can dispose of it as you like. Don't think too much about it. The date was last night. I suddenly realized, these past few days, I had been rejoicing that as long as Chi and I had the surgery, he could stay healthy and accompany me until old age. But the 19-year-old Chi and I didn't know that, fear is a human instinct. He would be afraid of suffering from a terminal illness like his grandparents. He wasn't the Mr. Chi who could strategize in the business world 10 years later. I should have been more patient. What's the harm in coaxing him a bit more? He was already feeling so bad. I couldn't wait to fly to Chini's side immediately. Just as I was about to close the safe, my eyes were attracted by the white bedsheet at the bottom layer. I took a few more glances and saw that the bedsheet label had the logo of a hotel pasted on it. Did Chi and I bring back the bedsheet from the hotel that night? I couldn't even bear to look at it. I quickly locked the safe and fled the room with a burning face. You shy little pervert. 12. During the few days when Chi and I was preparing for the surgery, I became the most diligent student in his major. I took full class notes for every class. I asked Chini's roommate to send them back to the dormitory. After a few times, the boys couldn't hold back and asked me what my relationship with Chi and I was. I smiled. I've had a crush on Chi and I for a long time. The few of them were so shocked that their mouths could fit an egg, under my brainwashing day after day. When Chi and I was discharged from the hospital and returned to school, his world was turned upside down. Almost everyone knew that the school hunk Chi and I had a fanatical admirer. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I stood downstairs in the boys' dormitory. Chi and I had no choice but to say, Chungzi, what on earth do you want to do? I looked up and asked, have you brushed your teeth? He was stunned for a moment, and his eyebrows furrowed. Then let me have a kiss. I immediately stood on tiptoe and kissed him. There was a smell of mint toothpaste. I gently poked his chest. I don't like it. Change to lemon-flavored toothpaste next time. Chi and I grabbed my hand, and the tips of his ears turned completely red. Chungzi, can you please not be so? He couldn't even say a complete sentence, because I blocked his mouth again. Chi and I, the pathological results are out. You're not sick, and you'll be healthy in the future. Is it really that difficult to admit that you like me? I cried, wronged, tears. Chi and I stood there, stunned, his whole body stiff. I was crying so hard that I was gasping for air. Stop crying. Chi and I raised his hand and pressed me into his arms. He let out a soft sigh. I'm not worthy of you, miss. I'm not a good person. If you're with me, you'll regret it. I pinched his pectoral muscle hard. Better to die under the peony flower than to live without love. Chi and I let out a muffled groan. He tightened his embrace, which was as tight as a drum, and his face was expressionless, but that couldn't stop his little brother from greeting me in agreement. Chi and I haven't had breakfast yet. Okay. He took a deep breath, seemingly finally calming down. He said awkwardly, I'll go buy some. In less than 10 minutes, he came back with hot breakfast. They were all the things I liked to eat. In a trance, I seemed to see Chi and I who used to revolve around me in high school. It was also like Mr. Chi who solved all my troubles for me when he was 29 years old. 13. The photo of me and Chi and I hugging was posted on the forum. Some people said that I was too timing, engaged to Zhou Yang on one hand and flirting with the school hunk Chi and I on the other. Those malicious comments were deleted by the system not long after they were posted. I poked Chi and I, who was sitting upright. Did you delete them? Yeah, they were talking nonsense. After some persistent pestering, I successfully moved into Chini's house. But this certain someone was so proper that he would rather sleep in the living room with a tent pitched high every night and give the bedroom to me. There was a new post on the forum. It exposed that everything had nothing to do with Chungzi and that it was Chi and I who was brazenly harassing the other party. I handed the tablet to him and asked, which kind-hearted person posted this? Chini's face became unnatural as he closed the forum page. Don't look at these, they'll affect your mood. I could tell with my toes who did it. I smiled and threw myself into Chini's arms, afraid that I would fall. He instinctively supported my waist. Hey, how should I thank my big hero? I slightly lowered my head and leaned in. Chi closed his eyes. His thin lips pursed slightly, a blush appeared on his ears. I couldn't help laughing. Is student Chi asking for a kiss? Realizing that he had been tricked, he opened his eyes in shame and annoyance. He turned his face to the side. I playfully kneaded his red earlobe. I played with it until it became hotter and hotter. Student Chi can endure so much. I leaned over and kissed him, then endured a bit longer. I'll give you a proper status. How could I bear to let this little pervert who I finally coaxed into my arms be the other woman? 14. A wealthy family's arranged marriage couldn't be called off so easily, even though Su Jing exaggerated the situation in front of Zhou Yang's parents and said that I had a young lover outside. The Zhou family had no intention of breaking off the engagement. They even said that as long as I was willing to be a daughter-in-law of the Zhou family, they would give me absolute freedom. To put it bluntly, they were just eyeing the Qing family's property behind me. I was determined to break off the engagement, and even though Zhou Yang reacted violently, it was of no avail. On the campus where people were coming and going, he held my arm tightly, his face contorted with anger. Just because I didn't coax you after our last quarrel, you want to break off the engagement? How can you treat me like this? I won't allow it. Zhou Yang roughly dragged me towards the car, just as I was about to take out my phone and call the police. Chi suddenly pushed through the crowd and rushed over, punching Zhou Yang in the face. Zhou Yang covered his face in pain and let go of my arm. Seeing the bruises on my wrist from being grabbed, a cold light flashed in Qini's eyes, and he raised his leg and kicked Zhou Yang in the chest. He pinned the man down and punched him fiercely. When the security guards arrived, Zhou Yang's face was swollen like a pig's head, and he was lying on the ground with blood in his mouth. I held Qini's arm and shook it vigorously. The murderous look in his eyes gradually faded away. He held my hand, and the concern in his eyes couldn't be hidden. If he hadn't been stopped, he probably would have kicked Zhou Yang a few more times. Not long after we arrived at the police station, Zhou Yang's parents rushed towards their son, crying. Su Jing came with my parents. She bit her lip and silently stood behind Zhou Yang. The Zhou family wanted to send Chi to prison on the charge of intentional injury. My father was the first to object. How can an act of heroism be considered intentional injury? He smiled and held Qini's hand. Son, I will definitely send you a banner in person another day to thank you for saving my daughter. Chi opened his mouth to explain, but after I gave him a glare, he obediently shut up. Zhou Yang's parents were left speechless. To put it in a bigger context, Zhou Yang's act of pulling and dragging me in public was considered kidnapping, which was illegal. The Zhou family had to swallow their anger and humiliation. They hurriedly took their son to the hospital. After a moment of hesitation, Su Jing followed them. My mother pulled me aside, glanced at Chi, who was being questioned by my father, and asked in a low voice, "Is he the boy you forced that night?" Even though I had a thick skin, I couldn't help coughing in embarrassment. After being reborn, I monitored Su Jing immediately. I sent my parents her medicine purchase orders and the surveillance video of her drugging me. In the version I told them, I was drugged and was so desperate that I randomly took away the innocence of an innocent male college student. Don't you remember Chi? Didn't you and Dad sponsor him to go to university? My mother looked surprised. Our family foundation only sponsors primary and secondary school students in poverty-stricken areas. College students are not within the scope of sponsorship. I nodded, already feeling numb. It seemed that it was another lie fabricated by Chi in my previous life to make me feel at ease in accepting the inheritance. Fine, he was really something. I didn't say a word on the way back. Chi took out the medicine box and applied ointment to me. He knelt down in front of the sofa. Does it hurt? In fact, the red marks on my wrist had almost faded away, but I didn't say anything. Chi looked a bit annoyed. Seeing that I still ignored him, he looked a bit wronged. He lowered his gaze and said, "I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for?" I lifted his chin. He didn't resist. Instead, as if he was afraid that the weight of his head would press on my finger, he consciously rested his chin gently on my finger. He said in a hoarse voice, "I was too harsh on him. I'm sorry." I was taken aback for a moment and realized that he was talking about Zhou Yang. He thought I was blaming him for beating up Zhou Yang. I was almost angry enough to laugh. Chi, I'll say this one last time, I like you, only you. Even if you beat Zhou Yang to death, I won't have any objections, but if Zhou Yang dies, you'll have to pay with your life. Do you want me to be a widow for you again? Chi frowned and asked, again. I grabbed his cheeks in frustration. I don't care. Anyway, your life is mine. Without my permission, don't you dare to mistreat yourself. Chi and I had a strong and handsome face, and his cheeks didn't have much flesh, they were pulled out of shape, looking both ugly and handsome. He gave up resistance and looked at me helplessly. Got it. I rubbed his cheeks and said, good boy, I'll reward you tonight. I looked down suggestively, the tips of his ears turned bright red. He said sternly but inwardly timidly, I'm not so lustful, and I don't think about that kind of thing every day. He went into the kitchen to cook with his head down. The apron strings were tied tightly, outlining his beautiful waistline. The kitchen door wasn't closed. He held the spatula and walked back and forth in front of me, looking for soy sauce and vinegar. You shy little thing. 15. I sent the information investigated by the private detective to my parents. Even though the Qing and Zhou families had already fallen out, Su Jing still chose to stand on Zhou Yang's side. She didn't even call back, after the incident of drugging me. My father had already withdrawn his love for Su Jing. My mother cried for a while and also saw Su Jing clearly. She asked me what I planned to do. I asked the servant to pack all the worthless things in Su Jing's room and send them to her school. All the valuable bags and jewelry were sold, and the money was converted into cash and donated to poverty-stricken mountainous areas. I also stopped her pocket money, by the way. Su Jing was used to living a lavish life and couldn't stand it for less than a week. She and Zhou Yang, who had just been discharged from the hospital, blocked me at the door of the classroom. I took Qini's hand and signaled him not to be impulsive. Su Jing resorted to her old tricks and knelt down again. She sobbed and pleaded, Z, it's all my fault. Please let me go home. I really can't bear to part with aunt and uncle. Her eyes were misty with tears. And she longed for Zhou Yang to be her savior again, just like last time, but Zhou Yang didn't even glance at her. He stared at me intently. Gigi, I made her apologize to you. Let's make up and don't break off the engagement. Su Jing looked up in disbelief. I pulled Qi and I and took a step back to avoid being affected by the bad luck. Stung by my disdainful gaze, Zhou Yang suddenly sneered and pointed at Qi and I. You like him. Don't be naive. Gigi, do you think he's sincere towards you? You have no idea how despicable this man is. Qini's hand froze for a moment. Zhou Yang looked at the onlookers in the classroom and raised his voice. Your school hunk once took 300,000 yuan from me and promised to leave my fiancé. Would a despicable person like this, who is only interested in money, have true love? Gigi, you're so naive. 16. Many eyes turned to Qi and I. Surprise, contempt, disgust. Qi and I didn't care. He was originally a person who had struggled in the mud, a person who had been so poor since childhood that he couldn't even afford a piece of meat. What self-esteem could he have? But in front of Qingzi, he desperately tried to maintain a bit of dignity, even if he couldn't get her love. He didn't want to be more hated. That year, he saved the young lady who fell into the water. His legs were broken by the stones at the bottom of the river. And he was in so much pain that he passed out for a day. As soon as he woke up, he received the sad news that his grandfather was critically ill. The surgery fee was 300,000 yuan. Zhou Yang gave it to him. In exchange, Qi and I needed to disappear from Qingzi's sight. He also couldn't tell anyone about the incident of saving her. Qi and I knew that by taking this money, he would be even further away from Qingzi. He shouldn't have any more extravagant hopes. He was despicable and shameless. After the college entrance examination, he inquired about her college application. Qi and I went to the same school. He had no other thoughts. It would be fine just to pass by. It would be even better if he could take a look at her. Every time the young lady touched him, he was on the verge of losing his mind. He endured and didn't dare to move. His heart uncontrollably gave birth to a crazy longing for her to get closer. He was afraid of being seen through his despicable inner self. The feelings that couldn't be expressed aloud blossomed into an eternal flower on his broken and dirty soul, until the girl beside him held his hand tightly, playfully tugged at his ear. Student Qi and I, are you a fool? Do you think this young lady is only worth 300,000 yuan? 17. Qi and I was on high alert. I thought there was something serious, but in the end, was this all there was? Zhou Yang, you're so stingy. I'm ashamed to have you as my former fiancé. I didn't care what the ferocious-looking Zhou Yang was thinking. I dragged Qi and I out of the crowd. When we reached a secluded corridor, Qi and I suddenly hugged me from behind. His chin gently rested on my shoulder, and the breath he exhaled tickled my ear. Miss, his voice was hoarse, I'm not a good person. I rolled my eyes. I've heard this sentence so many times in 2 lifetimes that my ears are almost calloused. So what? I asked irritably. I like you so much, miss. He spoke slowly. his tone awkward yet extremely earnest. I covered my wildly beating heart. It wasn't even a particularly passionate love confession, but I was hopelessly moved. I already knew that. Miss, he called again in a low voice, his voice broken and lingering. He had no idea how alluring he looked at this moment. He was cautious and tentatively touched my ear with his lips. Miss, I shuddered and stopped him. Don't call me that. Call me that tonight. 18. Su Jing was pregnant with Zhou Yang's child. However, Zhou Yang's parents refused to let her into the family, just like in the previous life. She tried to bring down the Qing family to please Zhou Yang's parents, but in this life, I had already reminded my parents. As soon as Su Jing took the company documents, the police arrested her at the Zhou family's residence. For stealing company secrets, Su Jing was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The Zhou family certainly didn't want to take care of her. But Su Jing was pregnant with Zhou Yang's child. With this guarantee, she lived quite comfortably in prison. Zhou Yang came to me several times to try to get back together, but my parents drove him away. He didn't want to admit the existence of the child in Su Jing's belly and went to race with others when he was in a depressed mood. The brake line had been tampered with, and Zhou Yang, along with his car, rolled down the mountain. Although he survived, his private part was injured. And he lost his fertility. The child in Su Jing's belly became the only hope of the Zhou family. They secretly had someone do a paternity test, and it turned out to be a boy. In the end, the child wasn't saved. Su Jing bullied others in prison relying on her pregnancy, and there were many people who couldn't stand her. After losing the child, she also lost her only value. The Zhou family discarded her like garbage. Su Jing wrote many letters and sent them to the Qing family. Before the letters reached my parents' hands, I instructed the servant to throw them into the trash. Qi and I started a company. He didn't go to the stall to sell multigrain pancakes every day anymore. I asked him why. He said there was a smell. So what? He blushed and didn't say anything. At night, while he was taking a shower, I had the nerve to peek at his diary. The boy in the diary was overly honest. If there's a smell on my body, the young lady won't kiss me. I quietly put the diary back. When Qi and I came out, I sniffed. I'm in trouble. Student Qi and I just lit the aphrodisiac incense that Su Jing gave me. Qini's body stiffened. I staggered and leaned into his arms. I quickly pulled off the annoying bath towel, touched him twice. I looked up and asked, Qi and I, are you hot? His Adam's apple rolled twice, and his collarbone turned pink. His hand silently supported my waist. He said hoarsely, yes, I'm hot. The bedsheet was soiled again. Qi and I changed to a new set. I sat on the bed, swinging my feet. His gaze dropped, and his movements became slower and slower. Finally, he threw away the bedsheet. He slowly knelt down beside the bed. I raised my foot and pressed it against his chest. He obediently held it and kissed up attentively. With his other hand, he opened the bedside table and took out a new box. He looked up at me with wet eyes. I'm uncomfortable, miss, I want more, all night long. The little pervert said a lot of flirtatious words, with a blushing face. The company arranged a 12-hour live streaming task for me every day. He knows exactly what I like. He deliberately bit my ear and called me one after another. Miss, I like it, kiss me more. Okay. Even when he was bullied severely, he wasn't angry. His black eyes were shining brightly, like a tamed puppy, without any bottom line. The young lady can do anything to me. Oh, so when the sun rose, I held his hand that had been misbehaving. I smiled wickedly and said, Student Qi and I. The aphrodisiac incense was fake, but the way you were burning with desire was real. His movements were like they were paused. He panicked. He quickly covered my eyes. Don't look. His voice was full of shame, and he was almost crying. I was about to soothe his fragile heart. Qi and I suddenly lowered his head and kissed me. Gasping for breath, he obsessively held my lips and tongue. It's too late even if the young lady knows. I'm not a good person. I want to be with the young lady forever. I really liked this love confession this time. Story 2. After Wei Zai's beloved Moonlight got divorced due to infidelity, he didn't hesitate to break up with me and post it on his social media. I really wish I could go back 8 years and change the fate of Sun Yanxia marrying that jerk. Sun Yanxia was the woman he always held dear, his Moonlight. Later, he and I traveled back 8 years together. He changed the fate of his Moonlight marrying the jerk. I changed the fate of being with him. 1. When I saw Wei Zai's social media post, I had just finished an 8-hour surgery on a patient. On my way back to the office, I fainted in the hallway due to physical exhaustion. When I came to, I was in a dimly lit private room with colorful lights flashing all around and loud music playing on loop. Someone tapped my shoulder and joked, you really can't hold your liquor." Knocked out after just one drink. As my vision gradually focused, I could see the person in front of me. It was Sun Yanxia, wearing a wine-red short dress and her hair slightly curled. I stared at her bright and beautiful face for a few seconds before stumbling into the restroom, looking into the mirror. I splashed cold water on my forehead repeatedly, forced to believe that the scar was gone. I had traveled back to my freshman year, 8 years ago. Today was my roommate Sun Yanxia's birthday, and I had passed out on the couch for a long time after mistakenly drinking a very strong alcoholic beverage. With my head still spinning, I had just left the restroom when I bumped into someone. Before I could apologize, a familiar deep voice sounded in my ear, "Sorry, are you okay?" My fingers tightened around my phone unconsciously as I looked up at the man in front of me, tall and with sharp, deep-set eyes, wearing a simple black loose t-shirt. It was Wei Zhe. Our gazes locked for a few seconds. Ignoring his ambiguous expression, I calmly said it was fine and walked past him. Back in the private room, I had just opened a bottle of water to drink when Wei Zhe came in. Sun Yanxia, with a smile, introduced him to us while wrapping her arm around his. "This is my brother, Wei Zhe. He studies at the neighboring university." A university. The flickering lights continued to sway as he stood with one hand in his pocket, looking down at us and nodding slightly. If it weren't for our accidental collision in the hallway, this would have been our first meeting in our past life. Wei Zhe, Sun Yanxia's half-brother from different parents, the man I loved and was with for 6 years. I discovered he didn't love me on the day Sun Yanxia got married. When he drunkenly held me and tenderly called out, "Xia Xia, Xia Xia," at that moment, I felt completely numb from head to toe, and it took a long time for me to realize that Xia Xia was Sun Yanxia. He was in love with Sun Yanxia. Sadly, that was when I loved him the most, so I sat through the night, and the next day I pretended as if nothing had happened, continued to be with him, continuing to believe what he once told me, "She's just my sister." That was until Sun Yanxia got divorced after being cheated on. I overheard her tearfully leaning on Wei Zhe's shoulder. "Brother, the one I've always loved is not him, it's you. Do you still want me?" She said it was because their mother had a heart condition and threatened death to keep them apart, which is why she pretended to fall in love with someone else, and that's why she pushed him towards me. I didn't know whether to believe her words, but Wei Zhe did, so that night, Wei Zhe found me. And after a long, silent stare, he hoarsely said, "Yuan, let's break up." Looking into his handsome face, I didn't even get a chance to ask the obvious why before being called in for an emergency surgery. Forcing down all emotions with rationality and calm, I stayed in the operating room for 8 hours, and when I came out, I saw Wei Zhe's social media post. I really wish I could go back 8 years and change the fate of Sun Yanxia marrying that jerk, too. Now that I have a chance to do it all over again, I see clearly the details that I either overlooked or ignored before, like the birthday cake Wei Zhe made personally for Sun Yanxia, how he gently took the wine bottle from her hands when she wouldn't let go, or how he didn't hesitate to carry a drunken Sun Yanxia on his back after the party ended. The other 2 roommates watched with emotion and remarked, "She's so lucky to have a brother that treats her so well." Back then, I naively thought he was just her brother, so, when Sun Yanxia later developed feelings for someone else and continuously tried to set me up with Wei Zhe, I genuinely fell for him, who was not only handsome and charming but also gentle and considerate. It wasn't until the truth came out that I realized his kindness and attentiveness were never directed at me, whether it was a birthday or an anniversary. He always seemed disinterested. His attention invariably fixed on Sun Yanxia whenever she was around. From the beginning to the end, the only person Wei Zhe loved was Sun Yanxia. Like now, as I was pulled into Wei Zhe's car, sitting in the back seat dozing off with my roommates, during a pause at a red light, Wei Zhe tenderly looked over at Sun Yanxia, who was also asleep from too much drink in the passenger seat. The evening breeze lifted a strand of hair by my ear, and I silently kept to myself in the dim light. Slightly opening my eyes, through my blurred vision, I saw Wei Zhe gently raising his hand towards Sun Yanxia, softly uttering, "Xia Xia, this time, I won't let you marry him." My heart pounded violently at that moment. I closed my eyes, entering the darkness, clearly realizing that Wei Zhe had also traveled back in time. He wouldn't let Sun Yanxia marry someone else, and I would no longer be with him. After returning to the dorm and lying on the familiar yet strange bed, the ceiling fan whirred above me, blowing bursts of hot air. rubbing my slightly aching head. I fell into a deep sleep. In my dream, I found myself trapped in a loop, repeatedly experiencing the 8 years from meeting Wei to breaking up, over and over, hearing him say, "Yuen, let's break up." What saved me from this nightmare was the vibration of my phone. I opened my eyes, spaced out for a few seconds, then grabbed my phone to check my schedule. Suddenly remembering that I had taken up a part-time job tutoring a high school student in English, looking at the time, I quickly got out of bed, washed up, grabbed a bag of bread, and hurried to the student's house. Fortunately, I was teaching English, a skill I hadn't abandoned due to needing to keep up with the latest medical research after starting my job. After flipping through the teaching materials, I got a rough idea of the lesson. I was teaching a high school girl. After explaining the lesson I had prepared in advance, I started to check the English composition assigned by her school teacher on a very common theme, me. 10 years from now. Resting her chin in her hands, she asked, "Teacher, do you think I can become a cartoonist in 10 years? I confidently told her, "You can, in less than 10 years, actually in just 8, she would become a cartoonist with a huge fanbase and soaring popularity." Then, "Teacher, have you become a doctor?" "Yes," she sound. Then suddenly excitedly pointed towards the tall, upright figure walking under the shade of trees with a black umbrella outside the glass window, confidently saying, "Then Teacher Wen must have become a physicist researcher." Through the curtain of rain, I looked up and our eyes met. My heart suddenly tightened, and memories quietly surfaced. He wouldn't have 10 years, in just 2 years, he would die in a car accident. 3. His name was Wen Zhao. A favorite disciple of the devilish professor in the physics department at the neighboring university, and also the center of conversation among countless female students, repeatedly featured on the confession walls of various universities as a person perfect in both looks and ability. His only flaw, perhaps, was his humble background. My interactions with him were few, only having met him several times in our university library, but the most memorable was during my junior year. The day I went to the hospital to visit the sick Wei Zhe, on my way back to campus, while crossing the street at a pedestrian crossing with others, a speeding car ran the red light heading straight for us. Amidst the screams and chaos, a black Mercedes with astonishing speed suddenly intervened, blocking the car. After a loud screeching of tires, both vehicles crashed into the distant railing. Instinctively, I ran toward the scene, but halfway there, an explosion unexpectedly erupted, and flames instantly blocked the view. The cicadas in the nearby camphor trees fell silent for a moment before resuming their loud calls. No one in the car survived, and a flying shard grazed my forehead, leaving a scar. Later, this incident made the headlines. The results revealed that among the 2 charred bodies, one was a car driver who, after losing everything due to gambling, wanted to take revenge on society. He had gasoline in the car. The other was Wen Chao. He was driving for his professor that day, helping him retrieve documents from another university. On the way back, they happened to pass along that road. Netizens quickly unearthed all sorts of information about him, and countless photos of him spread across the internet. Some admired his looks and talents and mourned his untimely departure, while others remarked, "He saved so many families, he died a meaningful death," given that he was alone. Having lost his father early and his mother to a severe illness during his college entrance exam year, he truly was alone. No one would mourn his departure. Only the research project he was working on came to an abrupt halt and remained uncontinued by anyone for years. Once, when I brought flowers to visit his grave, I met his mentor, a chubby little old man. He stood silently in front of the grave until a light drizzle began, and then he heaved a deep sigh. Ah, this child had such a bright future ahead of him. For a long time afterward, I suffered from insomnia. My heart felt as if it was soaked in water, heavy and sore. I guess that was my guilt and regret for him. My wrist was gently tugged, snapping me back to reality. By the time I looked out the window, Wen Chao's figure was gone, and I heard a student speaking. "Teacher Xiaoyu, I'm going to attend Professor Wen's physics class now. Remember what I just told you, don't be late tomorrow night." I hadn't really heard what she said, but a distant memory reminded me that tomorrow was her birthday. Her parents were too busy to be with her, so she had asked me to keep her company. The rain had stopped outside without my noticing, and as I looked at the warm sunlight filtering through the clouds, I suddenly remembered the information about Wen Chao that I had seen online after his death. Tomorrow was also his birthday, but in fact, Wen Chao didn't celebrate his birthday, because on the day he was born, his firefighter father died in a big fire while on duty. without even having a chance to see him once. I think he probably wouldn't want a happy birthday, but that was the day he met the world, and he shouldn't be alone. So, the next day, I arrived at the student's home ahead of the scheduled time, carrying a cake and gifts. At that moment, Wen Chao was giving a lecture. As the sun set outside the window, he wore a plain white shirt. Clutching the exam papers while standing beside a wooden table, his gaze modest and refined. Seeing this scene, rumors I had seen later involuntarily surfaced in my mind. It was a chat screenshot of uncertain origin and authenticity, with just a few short lines. Someone asked him, "Wen Chao, do you have someone you like?" "Yes, go tell her." It took about 3 minutes before he replied, "Never mind." Most people actually didn't believe he would harbor a secret love with such a face. But by then he was already gone, and the truth would never be known. Even if it were true, his secret love would never see the light of day, whether it was his father he never met, his mother who died sick, his unknown secret love, his abruptly ended career, or his unregretted sacrifice. His life was full of regrets, a fragmented life, ultimately also ended abruptly. A genius of the physics department at University A should not have had such an end. After the class ended and night had completely fallen, the student eagerly ran up to me and hugged the paintbrushes I had bought for her, sighing, "Ah, if it wasn't for something Professor Wen had to do, the three of us could have been together." I pondered for a few seconds, then looked up at Wen Chao, who was packing up to leave, and blurted out, "How about Professor Wen?" Just as the words left my mouth, and he turned his head to look over, there was a sudden power outage, and the surroundings plunged into pitch darkness. I cleared my throat softly and lied to him calmly, "Maybe Teacher Wen should stay. We girls are afraid of the dark." There was a moment of silence in the air, then suddenly a burst of flame lit up with a bang. Wen Chao pressed down on a lighter with one hand while cupping the flame with the other. The contours of his face were drawn more deeply under the flickering light and shadows. He looked up and said softly, "All right." Using the dancing flame, I held up the candlelit cake before us and watched them speak earnestly. "Today we celebrate the continuation of life. May the rest of our days be safe and happy." Setting aside my guilt towards him, no one wished more for his lifelong peace and happiness than I did. In the dimly lit room, we shared the cake, its sweet scent filling the air. A student carefully ran into the study with a spoon in his mouth to fetch a report card, joyfully saying, "Teacher Xiao, my mom said I've improved a lot in this exam. To show our gratitude, she wants to invite you for a meal." Looking at the scores on the report, I remembered that this indeed happened in my past life, but at that time I had been called away by Sun Yanxia to help move props for a photo shoot, so I had politely declined the dinner invitation. My thoughts returned, and I suddenly looked towards Wen Chao, sitting in the dim light. Realizing that on the day of that meal in my previous life, I was supposed to have met him. 5. But I ultimately failed to make it to the appointment. On my way there, I stopped to save a child nearly hit by a car, injuring my calf and ending up in the hospital. To prove I hadn't flaked out at the last minute, I even took a photo and sent it to the student's parent. The injury wasn't serious, just a superficial scrape, stingingly painful but not requiring a hospital stay. While waiting for the doctor to apply the medicine, I unintentionally came across Sun Yanxia's social media post of her photography club's event. Wei Zhe was also in the photos. Naturally, he was always ready to respond to Sun Yanxia's calls. I remembered on our 4th anniversary, Sun Yanxia had a fight with her boyfriend and drunk dialed Wei Zhe from a bar, sobbing, "Brother, I'm so sad, can you come and keep me company?" We had just arrived at the restaurant we booked and hadn't started ordering when he stood up to leave. I said I would go too, but he stopped me, saying, Xia Xia has always been proud, she definitely wouldn't want you to see her in a sorry state." I asked him, "What about you?" "It's different for me, we grew up together." Later, after Sun Yanxia and her boyfriend made up, at a gathering she cooed to her boyfriend, "Humph, he's not the only one who likes me. If you make me angry again, I might just leave you." Wei Zhe silently drank a glass of wine nearby, saying nothing. He must have always understood. Sun Yanxia knew about his feelings but pretended not to, continuing to enjoy his affections without any burden while also being with the one she loved. As for me, Wei Zhe could shut me up with a simple, "She is my sister and your friend." Fortunately, having another chance, I won't let myself be used by them again. After my wound was bandaged, I limped out of the hospital. Suddenly, it started raining halfway, and my wound couldn't get wet. Enduring the sharp pain, I quickly sought shelter in a building to call a cab. Unfortunately, As if to add insult to injury, my phone died. The late summer breeze carried a hint of coolness. Just as I resigned myself to wait for the rain to stop, when Chow appeared, he came through the rain holding an umbrella, took off his jacket to tie around my injured calf, handed me the umbrella, and then picked me up, saying, "The road here is narrow. Not good for hailing a cab, let's find another spot." I leaned against him in astonishment, nestled in his embrace, amidst a faint scent of bitter grapefruit and the steady heartbeat resonating from his chest. My gaze swept past the prominent Adam's apple and settled on his profile. After getting into the car, I asked him why he came. He explained quite naturally that a student's mother was worried about me, but since she had a meeting, she asked him to check on me. Unfortunately, my phone was off, and he had spent quite a while trying to find me. Perhaps due to the rain, the air inside the car felt damp and stuffy. I cracked the window slightly, unable to imagine how many places he had searched. Later, as my tired nerves relaxed, sleepiness overtook me. When I woke up, the rain had stopped, and we were just arriving at the school gate. Wen Zhao carefully helped me out of the car and then carried me to the dormitory building. Before parting, I thanked him. Lowering his eyes and smiling gently, he said, "It's nothing, teacher you." After struggling back to my dorm, I realized that his jacket was still tied around my injured calf. It was already autumn when I returned to University A to give back the jacket. Due to my leg injury needing rest, and the constant light rain, I hadn't ventured out of campus much. I went to look for Wen Zhao on a sunny weekend, only to realize how recklessly I had acted, arriving without any information about him. Searching for someone this way was like looking for a needle in a haystack. In the end, I didn't find Wen Zhao but unexpectedly ran into Wei Zhe. As I passed the basketball court, amidst the chaotic noises, someone shouted, "Call an ambulance, he's fainted." Years of medical experience instinctively drove me to run over, part the crowd, and immediately kneel to check and perform CPR on the unconscious boy on the ground. About 15 minutes later, the boy gradually regained consciousness, and the clinic's doctor arrived. As I slowly stood up to leave, I accidentally caught sight of Wei Zhe, who had been watching me for who knows how long, standing in his red and black jersey among the crowd. Detaching my gaze peacefully, I picked up the jacket and turned to leave. Perhaps because of the increased attention, a boy's voice followed from behind. "Wei Zhe, do you know her?" "No," he replied, holding the jacket. "I found the nearest dessert shop to sit and recuperate." The wind chimes on the glass door occasionally jingled, and somewhat bored, I played Go on my phone. After the chimes sounded again, a figure suddenly appeared before me. I looked up, it was Wen Zhao. As the sound of game loss beeped from my phone, I looked at him with surprise and smiled. What a coincidence, to meet like this. The next second, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Not a coincidence, I came looking for you." Seeing my puzzled expression, he showed me his phone. Open to a page called Confession Wall Searching for People. The post showed a photo of me performing the rescue at the basketball court, with the caption, "I want to know everything about this woman in 3 minutes." Less than half an hour after it was posted, it had already gathered hundreds of comments, though most were just buzzing around, with only a few seriously discussing, "Look at those professional first aid skills. Must be from the neighboring medical school, right? How come she's at our school? The jacket in her hand looks like a men's style. Could it be her boyfriend's? Is her boyfriend from our school?" I didn't continue reading, feeling a bit embarrassed as I picked up the jacket beside me and handed it to him. It's been washed clean. That evening, back at my dorm, my roommate, who was always eager for gossip, immediately handed me her phone. It was displaying the confession wall of University A, with the latest post, "Case solved. She is the girlfriend of Wen Zhao from the physics department." The attached picture showed me handing the jacket to Wen Zhao at the dessert shop, with a pink filter that added a touch of ambiguity. As my roommate's gossiping spirit blazed, I immediately explained the situation to her. After hearing the whole story, she struggled with disappointment and then said, "Looks promising, let's ship them lightly for now." I could only smile wryly, looking down at Wen Zhao's WeChat profile picture, which bore his simple 2-character name, Wen Zhao. His avatar was a pure white origami crane. After some thought, I changed my contact name to Teacher Wen. His social media feed was pristine, containing only a text post without any images. "The wind is rising." The date of the post was the day we met. For some reason, I suddenly remembered a different path destiny could have taken. On the 6th anniversary of his death, right after a rain shower cleared up and the sunset bathed the sky in light, I visited him with a bouquet of flowers. Standing there, my shadow cast upon his tombstone, I quietly gazed at his dignified and refined image in the faded photograph. Suddenly, a gust of wind picked up. The strands of my hair fluttered beside my shoulders, and the rustling leaves seemed to signal the beginning of a new chapter in fate's trajectory. Later, time reversed, and we returned to the past. We met again. Fortunately, this was before I got to know Wei Zhe. Rather than choosing to waste time on revenge, I preferred to remain strangers with him, unrelated in any way, just like he said on the basketball court that day. I don't know you. Freshman year abruptly stopped amidst chaos and haste, if I remember correctly. Among the new students arriving at University A was the person Sun Yanxia liked. He was a direct junior under Wei Zhe, and they met at a gathering organized by Wei Zhe in a previous life. Then Sun Yanxia would fall for him and try to pair me with Wei Zhe. Eventually, through her repeatedly engineered coincidences, Wei Zhe would propose that we be together. Now, he too had returned to the time before Sun Yanxia and that guy met, probably to prevent their meeting and end up with Sun Yanxia himself. That's what I thought the ending would be, but fate always unfolds dramatically. On the last day of a specialized class before the holiday, I sat behind Sun Yanxia in the exam hall. Just as I finished and was about to submit my paper, I saw her, who had been sleeping on her desk, suddenly wake up and stand startled. She glanced at her paper, looked around, and then grabbed a confused classmate next to her, excitedly shouting, "What year is it? Tell me, what year is this?" I silently watched her back, stood up, handed in my paper, and left. Outside the exam hall, Wei Zhe was waiting for her. As I passed by, he suddenly called out to me. When I stopped and looked back puzzled, he asked, "Are you guys together?" I didn't understand the implication of his question, so I just responded, "What's it to you?" After that, due to the holiday, I didn't see him for a long time. I originally thought that starting over, both of us would rush towards each other and ultimately find happiness. It turned out not to be the case. Sun Yanxia once again did not choose Wei Zhe. Even with a second chance, she still liked Wei Zhe's junior. The words she said to Wei Zhe after she was cheated on and divorced were just a deception. Surprisingly, this time she did not try to match me with Wei Zhe. Instead, she tried to set him up with Jiang Lai, the woman who would cause her husband to cheat in the future. I didn't know what happened over that ending holiday, but when we met again, Sun Yanxia had become good friends with Jiang Lai. The night air was cool as I walked back to my dormitory with books in arms. Seeing Wei Zhe and Sun Yanxia talking under the building from afar, I didn't stop my steps and passed right by them, their conversation following behind me. Sun Yanxia, I'll say it again, she's not a good person. You're so naive. Staying close to her, you'll be deceived sooner or later. The next second, Sun Yanxia's coquettish voice rang out, "Brother, trust me, you don't understand her. She's really nice, just give it a try with her, please." 2 months later, Sun Yanxia officially announced her relationship. That day was a weekend, and I encountered a thoroughly drunk Wei Zhe at a party. In the hallway outside the private room, on my way back from the restroom, he suddenly pulled me into his embrace, the strong smell of alcohol enveloping me. As I realized what was happening and struggled more, he only held me tighter and murmured in my ear, "Xia Xia, why should you be with him? He's going to hurt you in the future. You must have been forced. You clearly like me, right? It's me who you truly like." After my resistance proved futile and I was about to kick him in the shin, the hand pressing on my back suddenly loosened, and in the next second, someone grabbed his wrist and threw him to the ground, and due to my struggle, I almost fell when he let go suddenly. Amid my slightly restrained cry of surprise, a strong arm swiftly crossed around my waist to steady me. It was Wen Chao. He happened to be here attending a celebration banquet organized by the group and stepped out for some air when he stumbled upon this scene. Perhaps due to the pain, Wei Zhe, who had been thrown to the ground, regained some clarity. He clumsily stood up leaning against the wall and frowned at me. "Yuan, any more words would be a waste." I grabbed Wen Chao, intending to leave, yet, Wei Zhe sarcastically spoke up from behind me. "Do you feel proud, Yuan? I know you like me. Are you pleased to see that I couldn't be with Xia Xia? Heh, what does it matter if you're with him? He's just a doomed soul, bound to die." I knew he might be mixing up people and events from 2 different lives and was emotionally unstable, starting to lash out irrationally. I didn't care what he said about me, but he shouldn't have spoken about Wen Chao like that. I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and walked up to Wei Zhe, who still looked at us with disdain, and told him word for word, "Shut up, Wei Zhe, he's not going to die, because I came to change his fate." although I couldn't travel back to before his father's sacrifice to save him, nor could I go back to before his mother died from illness to save her, but I have traveled to now. And I can save him. As I walked out of the hotel, it was only when the honking of passing cars sounded that I realized I was still holding Wen Chao's hand. The slightly warm and somewhat moist palm of my hand made me pause for a second before I immediately let go and hid my hands behind my back, clenching them tightly. Sorry, I forgot. And, thank you just now. His hand, hanging by his side, clenched into a fist as he looked down at me and asked, the things he said just now. My heart skipped a beat, and I hastily interrupted him. He was just drunk and spouting nonsense. Don't believe it, Wen Chao. You will have a bright future. You have a long, long future ahead. After a few seconds of silent eye contact, he suddenly smiled easily and asked me, what about you, Yuan? You're going to be an excellent doctor, right? After a long while, I smiled brightly at him and nodded firmly, as long as I'm alive, I'll do my utmost to cure and save people. Sun Yanxia ultimately failed to successfully match Wei Zhe with Jiang Lai, but Jiang Lai grew fond of and clung to Wei Zhe. In a sense, Sun Yanxia's goal was somewhat achieved, as Jiang Lai likely wouldn't let her husband cheat in the future. What she hadn't anticipated was that Wei Zhe had also traveled back in time, and Wei Zhe, stubbornly believing the lies Sun Yanxia had told him in their past life, clung to that lie like a lifeline, loving desperately until he was gasping for breath. The one to finally shatter that lifeline was Sun Yanxia herself. At a gathering I did not attend soon after, that evening, the two roommates who returned to the dorm described the scene to me with extremely complex expressions. Sun Yanxia, drunk, slapped Jiang Lai and was unstoppable, insisting on calling her a shameless mistress. The more her boyfriend tried to stop her, the more she lost control. However, what was strange, her brother was unusually calm, just quietly watching her throw her drunken tantrum. I was briefly surprised, opened my mouth, but ultimately said nothing. Wei Zhe wasn't calm, he was resigned. He knew that Sun Yanxia had also traveled back, and instead of choosing to be with him, she used him like a tool, used to intercept Jiang Lai. Wei Zhe was nothing more than a joke. For a long time after that, I didn't see him coming to look for Sun Yanxia again, but Sun Yanxia didn't care either. I did run into him a few times when I went to University A to see Wen Chao. The most memorable time was when Wen Chao and I were eating at a newly opened restaurant outside the school, passing by an outdoor barbecue stall, when suddenly a fight broke out. Wei Zhe was involved. The scene instantly became chaotic, filled with various roars, screams, and shattering sounds. A violently smashed beer bottle shard flew straight at me, and Wen Chao quickly pulled me into his arms, the shards grazing his cheek and leaving a thin trail of blood. I cried out in horror. Wen Chao, he quickly pulled me into a dumpling shop across the street and comforted me. It's okay, don't be afraid. Later, before the police arrived, the turmoil suddenly subsided, and I used mineral water to clean Wen Chao's wounds. Then I took out a green cartoon band-aid from my pocket, and as I was about to carefully apply it, Wei Zhe burst through the door. He was accompanied by a few others from the brawl, likely his friends, all variously injured. There were still traces of wiped blood on Wei Zhe's lips, as they continued to curse angrily at the other party involved in the brawl. I quietly continued to apply the band-aid to Wen Chao. Then I heard Wei Zhe suddenly kick a table, his voice filled with menace. Shut up. The next day, I was stopped by Wei Zhe at school. As light snow fell, his face still bore bruises, and his eyes were complex as he said, Yuan, it won't work out between you two. My advice, don't fall for him. My expression gradually cooled, and I turned to leave him with, I'm not a psychiatrist, don't come to me. Behind me, his somewhat frivolous voice lingered. Yuan, the person you should have liked is me. In my life, everything has been peaceful except for encountering Wei Zhe and Sun Yanxia, wasting 6 years of my emotions, and Wen Chao, I owe him a life. Initially, when I first came back, I thought I was here to change my fate with Wei Zhe, but it turned out not to be the case. One afternoon, near the end of my sophomore year, I was suddenly awakened from a nap by a nightmare. In the dream, I was back at that intersection, crossing the street with other pedestrians when a speeding car rushed towards us, and in the panicked crowd, I watched helplessly as a black Mercedes blocked the car and then exploded. The old ceiling fan above my head stirred my hair wildly as I stared blankly at the ceiling. I always knew it was an unsolvable problem. Beyond the driver's motive for hitting people out of vengeance, I knew nothing about him. I could save Wen Chao. I could avoid that intersection. But what about the old people, children, pregnant women, and students who might be there? Once when I was deep in thought and hopeless, I took a 1 in a million chance and went to the police, only to be told, "Student, have you been watching too many sci-fi movies? We handle cases based on science, not mysticism." In early June, as the college entrance exam approached, when Chow and I finished our tutoring jobs, by then, I had known him for nearly 2 years, and I hadn't seen or heard him mention any special girls, so I could almost conclude that the screenshot of his secret crush was fake. I had imagined the type of girl he might like. Maybe beautiful, maybe smart, maybe as outstanding as he was. But whatever the type, she would definitely be great. That evening, after another dinner with the students' parents to express their gratitude, it was already dark, and when Chow and I walked down an alley bathed in moonlight, maybe it was knowing that the end of the road meant parting, or maybe the night always brings out melancholy and nostalgia, but passing under a dim street lamp, I casually started a conversation. When Chow, "Do you have someone you like?" after a long silence. He responded indirectly, "What's up? If you ever find someone you like, make sure to tell her. Don't secretly pine for her without letting her know. Speak out, there will always be a chance." As his words fell, we paused at the intersection. Suddenly, he turned to me with utmost seriousness and said, "Yuan, thank you." I thought he was just thanking me for the reminder, so I didn't dwell on it. Life went on as usual for me after that, until the day before when Chow's past life sacrifice. His mentor had asked him to drive and pick up a document the next day. After finding out, I asked him if he could go in the afternoon instead, as a friend had given me 2 movie tickets for the morning. He agreed. The movie I chose randomly turned out to be about time travel. The synopsis described how the female lead goes back to the past to rectify the regrets of the male lead, and they fall in love just to realize it was all the woman's dream. However, I never saw the ending because midway through, I told Wen Chao, who was intently watching the movie, that I needed to go to the restroom. It seemed like any other day. After leaving the cinema, I drove the rented car towards that intersection, realizing suddenly that our meeting was meant for a farewell. Wen Chao, it's your turn to see the future world. Later, as I stood at the intersection watching the familiar crowd crossing the street, waiting for that car to appear, an explosion suddenly erupted nearby. My heart skipped a beat, and after a moment of blankness, I quickly got out of the car, dialed Wen Chao's number, and ran towards the direction of the explosion. No one answered the phone. Standing in front of the burning ruins, my vision gradually became obscured by a mist of water. Dizziness nearly overwhelmed my mind. And the last memory I have is, I still couldn't save him. I woke up in a hospital room, surrounded by the familiar smell of disinfectant. The white coat of the nurse and the phone beside my pillow all told me. It was 8 years later. The nurse said I had been unconscious for 20 minutes. As I watched the curtain fluttering in the wind, I couldn't tell if I had dreamed of the past, or if the present was a dream. It wasn't until I ran to the restroom, scooped up a handful of cold water and splashed it on my face, seeing that the scar on my forehead was really gone, that I confirmed I had truly traveled through time. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling as I quickly searched the browser for keywords related to that car accident. I found only a brief, old report. The trending searches were gone. When Chaz's information was gone, there was no gravestone, nothing remained. Later, I asked many people if they remembered the car accident that had trended 6 years ago, or the college student who had sacrificed himself to save many families. The answers I got were only of 2 kinds. Yuan, are you sure you're not mistaken? There was an accident, but it wasn't trending. I don't know. 6 years ago is too far back. Either I didn't notice or I forgot. When Chao had no family, and his former classmates had scattered to the 4 winds. I could only go to his university to find the professor he remembered. But the news I got was that the professor had gone abroad. I could no longer find anyone or anything related to Wen Chao. The only evidence that assured me I really knew him was his WeChat on my phone, with the last message in the chat box from the day before the accident 6 years ago, where he agreed to go to the movie with me. 6 years later, there was a void. I typed and deleted in the chat box, ultimately not daring to send anything. I feared it would become a message that never received a reply. As long as I didn't confirm it, I could believe that he was still alive. I developed a habit of taking walks at University A whenever I had free time, often unconsciously heading to the lake we used to visit frequently. When Chao's lab was on the first floor nearby, through the clear glass windows, I seemed to see a slender figure in a white coat, bent over and focused on recording various data at the work table. in the next second, he disappeared again. Wei Zhe came to see me the day after I returned. He said he didn't want to break up anymore, that it was all a momentary impulse, and asked me to trust him one more time. Facing his humble pleading, I stopped writing the medical record. She looked up calmly and asked him, Wei Zhe, have we ever been together? As soon as she finished speaking, the color drained from his face. The truth was, he had no evidence to prove they had ever been together. When they traveled back in time, not only did the trending news of Wen Chao's sacrifice disappear, but so did the 6-year relationship between her and Wei Zhe. Fate had brought the four of them back in time to 8 years ago. He wanted to change the outcome of Sun Yanxia marrying a scoundrel, wanted to be with her, and so he personally altered their relationship, although he eventually realized that he was just being used. He indeed had no relationship with her anymore. Afterward, Wei Zhe frantically tried to find various proofs to convince her that they had been together for 6 years, but it was all in vain. No trace of her in WeChat friends, only he remained in their photos together. Friends from their respective circles no longer recognized each other, and the surveillance footage of places they had visited no longer included her. As time passed, many of her colleagues, initially curious about the gossip, began to sigh. Such a handsome guy, why is his mind troubled? She smiled and softly said to Wei Zhe, who appeared again, turn left when you go out for the psychiatric department, consider visiting it sometime. In her steadfast denial of any relationship with Wei Zhe, the only one who knew about their past was Sun Yanxia. Having traveled back in time, she was cheated on once again, even though the possibility of Jianglai getting together with her husband was preemptively stopped. A cheater will always find a way to cheat. During the period Wei Zhe was entangled with her, not only was Jianglai pestering him, but Sun Yanxia was also desperately clinging to him, pathetically convincing Wei Zhe of her love and her dire circumstances. Initially, Wei Zhe was indifferent, but gradually he grew more impatient, until once, after being refused a meeting by Wei Zhe, she ran to her and caused a scene. She calmly watched her, then called security to take her away, saying the same thing. Turn left out the door to the psychiatric department, you should visit it too. Her colleagues continued to sigh. They really are a family, all a bit off in the head. Things quieted down for a while, and the next time she saw them was a month later when she went to the laboratory to retrieve some documents and saw Wei Zhe furiously throwing papers at 3 people from a distance. She didn't pay attention and turned to leave. Later, she learned from her colleagues that it was about Sun Yanxia being persistently entangled with Wei Zhe, which was discovered by her mother, who firmly stopped it, and Wei Zhe overheard it. Blood tests confirmed they were half-siblings with the same father, born just 3 months apart, meaning Wei Zhe's father had cheated while his mother was pregnant, and the lie Sun Yanxia once used to deceive Wei Zhe, her mother threatening death to keep them apart. After going around in circles, it turned out to be true. In mid-May, she was invited by a university to deliver a lecture on emergency medical knowledge. The venue was packed, and as she was packing up to leave, she suddenly saw a familiar figure among the dispersing crowd, but before she could get a clearer look, he was gone. As the sky darkened and light rain began to fall, she thought for a moment. Just as she was about to rush into the rain with her folder over her head, a black umbrella appeared above her. The familiar scent of bitter pomelo wafted from behind her. Drops of water slid from the slanted umbrella. Her heart skipped a beat, and after a long moment, she slowly turned around. What she saw was Wen Chao, whom she hadn't seen in 6 years. He looked the same as before, with sharp, handsome features and a distinct jawline. The car accident and explosion years ago had led to Wen Chao being taken abroad by his professor for treatment, where he was in a coma for about 2 years. After waking up, he stayed abroad for treatment and study until he returned home and became a professor in the physics department at this university. He briefly summarized his 6 years of experience in just a few words. She blinked, and the multitude of words she wanted to say ultimately condensed into 2. That's great. He was still alive, and that was truly great. The former Mr. Wen, now Professor Wen, remained as popular as ever among the female students. It is said that during his lectures, the room was so packed that people had to stand. Curious, I once intended to drop by during my free time to see for myself. However, unfortunately, he had switched classes with another teacher at the last minute, and I was unaware of it. By the time I realized, it was too late. I thought about sneaking out, but since I had chosen a seat by the window in the corner, it was difficult to leave without disturbing a large number of students around me. After struggling through half the class, I had just sent a message to Wen Chao when I was called upon to answer a question, staring at the geological question on the blackboard, which I couldn't understand at all. I took a deep breath and was just about to apologize and admit I had entered the wrong class when suddenly I heard a low voice from behind me, Mesoarchean. I repeated it instinctively, answered correctly, and sat back down. There was no reply from Wen Chao on my phone. Thinking about the classmate who had just helped me, I discreetly turned to thank him, only to meet the familiar handsome face. Wen Chao was wearing a black hoodie, with the hood casually placed on his head, his bangs pushed down slightly, covering part of his eyes. For a moment, it was as if I saw him as he was 8 years ago, quickly turning back, and after a brief pause, just as I was about to ask him why he was there, my phone vibrated. It was his message. I saw you enter this classroom by chance. I wanted to see what class intrigued Dr. Let so much that he attended in person. Above this message was the one I had sent him minutes earlier. I wanted to attend your lecture, but I think I went to the wrong classroom. What should I do now? My phone vibrated again, and another message from him appeared. It turns out it was my lecture. Me, over 6 years. Wen Chao seemed to have changed somewhat, still distant and cool, but back then he was more restrained. From that moment on, my relationship with Wen Chao returned to how it was 6 years ago, yet there was something different from before. At first, I couldn't tell what it was, until once, when I went to the school to find him, I accidentally overheard a conversation. It was probably one of his colleagues, troubled by romantic issues, who sighed and asked him, Professor Wen, how can I make her know that I like her? You probably don't have this trouble and can't understand my pain. Wen Chao didn't respond, and the colleague continued, speaking of which, you've rejected so many people. Do you already have someone you like? I heard a soft as I listened quietly, then turned and left without making a sound. In 6 years, so much can happen. I admit, I like Wen Chao. As for when the feeling of wanting to make amends turned into liking him, I can no longer trace its origin, but back then, knowing it was a hopeless affair, I chose to suppress it until 6 years later, when the spring breeze came and it spread instantly. After that, I often used work and overtime as an excuse to rarely meet him, keeping our relationship at a neither close nor distant level, until he appeared in my consultation room for 3 consecutive days. Somewhat helplessly, I told him, Wen Chao, you don't need to come every day. He stubbornly and seriously replied. I registered and queued up. What I mean is, you don't need to come for a checkup every day. It's not serious. He paused for a moment, his voice low, as if restraining himself. Actually, I'm not here for a checkup. His words were cut off when suddenly a man with a knife burst into the consultation room. With a fierce look, he accused, it was you who caused my wife's death. Later, amidst the chaos, the man was subdued. Wen Chao was injured by a knife while protecting me, requiring 10 stitches on his shoulder. Standing in front of his hospital bed, looking at his somewhat pale face, my voice turned hoarse and unnatural as I fought back tears. I'm sorry, whether in the past or now, he always ended up hurt because of me. After half a month in the hospital, as I drove him home, I delicately suggested, how about I hire a male nurse for you? We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. Typing on his phone, his fingers halted at my words. He turned and asked, misunderstand what? Silence fell in the car, broken only by the breeze that fluttered his hair and rippled across the calm lake of my emotions. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, I kept my eyes on the road and said no more. Ultimately, he refused to have a stranger take care of him, so I took on the responsibility that I felt was mine to bear. But in reality, he didn't need much looking after. Each morning before work, I would prepare lunch in advance, have breakfast with him, and then head to work, returning in the evening to share dinner. Over time, a strange feeling began to grow within me. One night, delayed by a colleague's birthday party I couldn't refuse, I called him to say I'd be late. My car broke down unexpectedly, and a male colleague gave me a ride back. As I opened the door, a sour smell hit me. Seeing Wen Chao poking at his food at the dining table, I asked, what are you eating? He looked up calmly. Can't you smell it? I'm eating vinegar. I walked over to see that he had ordered dumplings. The small dish in front of him filled to the brim with vinegar. I made him a bowl of noodles, opened a window to air out the room, and reminded him, don't eat like that again. The smell of vinegar is too strong. He quietly ate his noodles, not saying a word. The next day, a colleague who had once inquired if he had someone special in his heart came to visit him. The deliberately forgotten fact resurfaced. Wen Chao had someone he liked. I don't know what that teacher had told him, but it seemed to have affected Wen Chao's mood, and then I regretted paying too much attention to him, so, at dinner that night, I told him, "Your wound is almost healed." He glanced at me and simply nodded in acknowledgement. After dinner, I silently went to prepare a warm bath for him, reminding him as usual not to touch the wound. As I was leaving, I nearly slipped, but in a critical moment, he pulled me into his embrace. Our hearts pounded so intensely that for a moment, I couldn't tell whose was whose. After a few seconds, as I tried to get up, he gripped my waist tightly, immobilizing me. In the steam-filled bathroom, where our bodies touched, it felt as if a fire was igniting. He looked down at me with an unusual expression, his eyes turbulent, his voice low and husky. "Yuan, I must confess something." "What?" "I have improper thoughts about you." My mind was a mess, and the increasingly hot breath burned all my rational thoughts to ashes. I blurted out the conversation I had overheard, where someone asked him if he had someone he liked, and he had clearly responded affirmatively. The next second, he turned, pressing me against the wash basin, freeing one hand to write on the foggy mirror, "Yes, N." Soon after we became a couple. I voiced a doubt that had lingered in my heart for a very long time. "Why didn't you contact me during the 6 years you were abroad?" At that moment, he was lounging on the sofa reading a physics journal. Hearing my question, he pulled me into his embrace, and the faint scent of bitter grapefruit emanated from him. I heard his hoarse voice, "I'm scared." Before I could respond, he continued as he held me, "I'm scared I might become disabled and unworthy of you. I'm scared that once we get in touch, I'll want more, and I'm even more scared that you might already have someone you like." During a brief pause for breath, a surge of sadness welled up inside me, and my eyes grew slightly sour. I hugged him back, moved, and said, "Wen Chao, you're truly incredible, to have come this far on such a difficult path." After a moment of silence, his hand gently slid down my waistline. He chuckled softly, and asked me in a soothing voice, "I have more impressive things to show. Would you care to see me?" The tender atmosphere was instantly disrupted. Later, regarding this issue, Wen Chao always physically demonstrated to me, pausing halfway to ask if he was impressive. I never answered, and he never gave up. The first time Wen Chao took me to meet his parents was half a year after we fell in love. Looking at the woman on the gravestone, I was somewhat surprised. She was a beautiful and gentle woman, but in the end, she was tormented by illness into a shadow of her former self. She died with me by her side. My mother was her attending physician. During my senior year of high school, every time I went to the hospital to see my mom, I would encounter this auntie. Sometimes when I didn't find my mom in her office, I would wait in her ward. As this happened frequently, we gradually got to know each other. I would cut fruit for her, fold origami cranes, and chat with her. Until the eve of the college entrance examination, when she passed away. That was my first encounter with severe illness and death. Inexplicably understanding why my parents, who were always busy with hospital work, had no time for me, I chose the medical profession I had once despised when filling out my college applications. Unfortunately, I initially thought only cancer was incurable and hoped to find a solution, but after studying medicine, I realized there are few diseases that can be completely cured. What I never expected was, she was Wen Chao's mother. On the way back, I leaned against the car window, watching the scenery flash by, and said softly, "Wen Chao, actually, I met your mother a long time ago." He spoke calmly. "Yeah, I know." A thought crossed my mind, perhaps he had seen me back then. I met Wei Zhe again one evening, half a year later. Wen Chao sent a message saying I'll arrive in 10 minutes. I changed my clothes ready to leave work, and then met the pale, thin Wei Zhe in the elevator, just the two of us. During the silent interval, the elevator reached the ground floor, and I walked ahead, but my arm was suddenly grabbed, and he asked me, looking down, "Yuan, can we talk?" I frowned and freed myself from his grasp, coldly saying, "Wei Zhe, let's not waste each other's time." He seemed to anticipate my response, laughed self-mockingly, and said, "You might not believe it, but in another trajectory of fate, we were together for 6 years." Unwilling to engage with him, I turned and walked away, his voice trailing off behind me. "Unfortunately, I didn't treat you well and lost you." I paused briefly, then continued walking. Outside the hospital, by the flower bed, Wen Chao was waiting for me, under the setting sun's afterglow. I recalled the time when a student's parent invited us to dinner for the second time. I arrived at the venue first, thanking the parent for their concern when I was previously hospitalized. Hearing this, she said confusedly, "I didn't ask Xiaowen to visit you though." I just casually mentioned why you couldn't come, and later he said he had to leave for a school matter. So, that was it. My thoughts were interrupted as he took my hand, lifted a strand of my hair tousled by the evening breeze, and tucked it behind my ear. I wrapped my arm around his, leaning gently against him, feeling joyful and delighted as I spoke. Wen Chao, the wind is picking up. Extra story of Wen Chao. The netizens are right. It's better that I die alone than to destroy so many families. Actually, I'm not that noble. Fear of death is human nature, but if someone I care about is in danger, I am willing to die so that she may live. When I regained consciousness after the explosion, I found myself trapped in a cemetery. Initially, every anniversary of my death, those I had saved and some online friends would come to visit. What I heard most were words of thanks and praises about my meaningful death. Later, only Yuan continued to visit. She rarely spoke, mostly just placing flowers in front of the tombstone, cleaning the surrounding area, and then sitting quietly for a while. The first words I heard her say were on the 4th anniversary of my death. By then no one else came to visit me. In the misty drizzle, she stood in front of the tombstone, looking down at my photo as if making a promise. Wen Chao, rest assured, I will not forget you. That was the first time she called me by my name, and I never would have thought that meeting her would happen through death. But if given another chance, I would make the same choice. So when I unexpectedly returned to 8 years ago, in the 6th year after my death, I still chose that same ending. I knew she had also traveled back in time, knew her approach was filled with reparations and guilt. But that was enough. After all, it's better than never having met her in my previous life, right? The years I spent alone were so long they were frightening, but the first 2 years I knew her made me feel the brevity of time for the first time. If I'm not destined to be her lover, being someone she will never forget for a lifetime isn't bad either. I actually don't remember what that criminal looked like, nor do I know his license plate number, but I remember before that intersection, he threw a few beer cans out of the car window, drinking while driving. This was the only piece of information I had to stop him before Yuan could. So, when I saw him toss a beer can out from the car again, I chased him and honked the horn. Unexpectedly, as if provoked, he immediately sped towards a nearby plaza. As I sped up to block his path, I inappropriately remembered that unfinished movie. Perhaps I'll never know the ending now. That year, in late spring, I took leave from school to visit my mother in the hospital. The ward was very quiet, and my mother was still sleeping. As I walked to the other side to sit down and read, I saw a plate of neatly cut fruit and a pure white origami crane next to it on the bedside table. In a moment of surprise, my mother woke up. She smiled gently and said to me, "NN made this for me."